This happened last summer, right in the thick of July heat. I was home in Maryland after my first year of college, trying to squeeze the last bit of freedom out of my break before classes kicked back up again. My name's Ryan, and at the time, all I wanted was one good weekend with my two closest friends, Evan and Drew. We all ended up at different colleges, so moments like this were rare, too rare. After a week of planning, we settled on a quick trip down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Evan's aunt owns a small beach condo in a quieter part of town called Myrtle Sound. She barely uses it, so he got the okay for us to stay the weekend. It wasn't anything fancy. 2 bedrooms, old furniture, and one of those 90s beach house paintings of a dolphin jumping out of the water. But for us, it was perfect. The drive down was long and sticky, the kind where the humidity crawls into the car even with the AC blasting. By the time we arrived, the beach was crowded. Families dragging coolers, teenagers tossing footballs, toddlers screaming at waves like they were personal enemies. Lifeguards were out waving flags and shouting at people drifting too far. It felt like summer, a real one. We crashed at the condo for dinner, grilled some burgers on the tiny balcony, blasted music, and drank cheap beer Evan bought with a fake ID that honestly should not have worked. By midnight, we were tipsy, sweaty, and bored out of our minds. That's when Drew suggested something stupid, but somehow perfect. Let's go down to the beach at night. Come on, it'll be chill. And yeah, something about the ocean at night hits different. Quiet, empty, peaceful, but also eerie in a way you can't explain. We brought hoodies, our phones, and a half-working flashlight Evan found in a kitchen drawer with leaking batteries. We didn't plan on swimming, just walking and maybe skipping stones like old times. We took the wooden stairs down to the sand. As expected, the place was practically deserted. The usual noise of Myrtle Beach was drowned out by the sound of waves rolling in. The sky was cloudy. The moon kept slipping behind the cover, giving us barely enough light to see where the tide ended. We walked along the surf, letting our feet sink into wet sand. After a while, we stopped near an abandoned lifeguard stand and laid down, staring up at the sky and talking about classes, girls, dumb professors, stuff that suddenly mattered a lot when you're 19. Then Evan abruptly sat up. "Yo, is someone walking over there?" Drew and I sat up and squinted toward the shoreline. At first, I didn't see anything except the dark outline of waves. But then, yeah, a shape, a person, maybe 50 yards away, a lone silhouette walking right along the edge of the water. Nothing weird about that, except for the way they moved. Their walk was stiff and strange, like each step took effort. Their head wasn't straight. It was tilted, not drooping, just angled, like they were trying to listen to something beneath them. Something about it made my skin crawl. We watched for a bit. Nobody said much. Eventually, we convinced ourselves it was just some late-night walker, or maybe someone drunk out of their mind. But then we noticed something else. They had stopped, and they were definitely closer now. 30 yards, maybe less. Just standing there, facing us. I whispered, "He's probably just looking at the tide, chill." But Drew nudged me. No, the beam flickered, sputtered, then hit the figure dead on for a single second before the battery died completely. but 1 second was enough. The person was pale, unnaturally pale, shirtless, and dripping wet, like he had walked straight out of the ocean. His jeans clung to him, soaked. His arms hung limply, dead still, and his head, that strange angle, wasn't in my imagination. His eyes looked too wide, too locked on us. Then, without warning, he moved, not walked, not ran. He launched forward, full sprint, straight at us. We screamed and bolted. I don't remember making decisions. I just remember the sound of my feet slamming into the sand and Drew yelling, "Go, go, go," behind me. The air felt colder, like something was chasing us that shouldn't be there. We ran all the way up the wooden stairs, across the boardwalk, and didn't stop until we reached the main road. Only then did we turn around, and he was gone. No movement, no silhouette, no sound except waves, no footprints behind us, just empty shoreline. We rushed back to the condo, locked everything, shut the blinds, and stayed awake until sunrise. None of us slept. I kept expecting to see that pale face pressed against a window. The next day, we tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was some unstable dude trying to mess with us. But the way he moved, the lack of prints, none of that added up. We stayed one more night, but we didn't step foot outside. A few weeks later, something worse started happening. Evan texted me one night saying he kept having nightmares. The same one. He'd wake up at 3 or 4 a.m., and the figure from the beach, pale, soaked, head tilted, would be standing in the corner of his room, just staring. I didn't tell him I'd been having the exact same dream. Sometimes I swear I hear wet footsteps in the hallway, but when I check, nothing's there. Then, last week, almost a year later, I was scrolling through a Myrtle Sound community group when I saw a post. Anyone know who this creepy guy is? Seen him at 1 a.m. last night at the waterline? Attached was a photo. Blurry, grainy, dark, but I knew him instantly. Same posture, same pale skin, same angle of the head. The comments were worse. Seen him too. He just stands there for hours. Watched him walk into the water. Didn't come out. Found wet footprints on my patio, but none leading up to it. I don't know what we saw that night, but I know this much. I'll never go back to Myrtle Sound after sunset. And I'm terrified one night I'll wake up to that familiar sound. Wet footsteps, closer than before. My name is Maya, and this happened when I was 18. My cousin Evan had just finished a year-long research program in Seattle, and the two of us were driving his car back to our hometown in South Carolina. He'd collected way too much stuff during those 12 months. Boxes of gear, notes, equipment, and a huge crate of camping supplies. Shipping it would have cost more than his monthly rent, so he decided a road trip was the cheapest solution. Honestly, I didn't mind. It felt like the perfect excuse for a summer adventure. Instead of taking a straight route through the Midwest, Evan wanted to swing through the Pacific Northwest and the Rockies. I had never seen places like Crater Lake or Shoshone National Forest, so I was all for it. But before we left, both our parents warned us about something. Avoid stopping in the middle of nowhere desert towns in Wyoming. Random travel blogs repeated the same thing. Travelers getting hassled, sketchy roadside businesses, weird scams. My aunt begged us, do not stop unless it's a real, well-lit gas station. Our plan was to fill up in Jackson, push through the back highways, and stop again once we hit Casper. Easy. But somewhere in the vast, empty stretch between the mountains and the plains, our plan unraveled. Evan misjudged how quickly his overloaded car guzzled gas. The low fuel light blinked on way too early. The GPS showed a tiny town called Dry Creek Ridge, only 12 miles ahead, supposedly with a gas station. We didn't have a choice. Dry Creek Ridge felt wrong immediately. It wasn't abandoned, but it might as well have been. No movement, no noise, no other cars, just low buildings, dusty windows, and a long stretch of cracked road. A hardware store, a boarded-up diner, and a small gas station that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. As Evan filled the tank, I noticed a few locals staring at us. Not hostile, just strangely fixed. Like they were waiting to see what we would do. A man sitting on an overturned bucket outside the gas station watched us the entire time without blinking. I tried to ignore it. We got back in the car, and Evan pulled up the GPS to guide us back to the highway. That should have been the easy part. But every single road we followed curved away from the direction we needed. We'd head toward the highway. I could actually see it in the distance. But the road would split, veer off, or end abruptly. Twice we wound up in the same dead-end gravel lot behind a shuttered grocery store. The GPS was useless, freezing and recalculating non-stop, sending us down streets that didn't seem to exist anymore. After nearly 30 minutes of going in circles, Evan sighed and said he'd go back to the station and just ask someone for directions. I begged him not to. Everything inside me felt wrong. A pressure in my chest I couldn't explain. But he was frustrated and tired and insisted. The cashier inside gave him directions, but something about them made his face pale. According to the guy, we needed to take a dirt road behind the town hall, drive 22 miles south, loop through an unmarked service road, and eventually we'd hit the highway on-ramp. 22 miles in the opposite direction. When we could literally see the highway from the edge of town, Evan got in the car and whispered, "I don't trust him. Something's weird." Before we could figure out what to do, a dusty beige SUV rolled up next to us. A middle-aged woman leaned out her window and asked if we were lost. Her face went serious when Evan mentioned the route the cashier gave him. She shook her head hard. "Don't go that way. That road heads toward an area no one should be wandering into." She didn't elaborate, but the tone in her voice made my skin crawl. She quickly gave us different directions, a barely noticeable gravel turnoff just outside town. Then she drove away before we could say anything else. We followed her instructions, and sure enough, about 2 miles out, hidden behind a row of dried-out brush, was a tiny gravel road with no signs. Something we would have missed 1,000 times. It twisted around a few hills, dipped under a narrow bridge, and eventually spat us out onto a lonely on-ramp that led directly to the highway. We didn't talk for a long time after that. Not until the mountains were far behind us. Looking back, We still don't know what was actually going on in Dry Creek Ridge. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But that feeling, like the town was somehow folding around us, is something I can still feel if I think about it too long. Evan described it perfectly once. It felt like we were driving through a place we weren't supposed to be in, and someone wasn't too happy we showed up. My name is Avery, and this happened when I was 17. A few summers ago, in mid-June, I was obsessed with spending time outdoors. Not for parties or drinking, just nature. There's a massive forest preserve near my hometown in Virginia, sprawling over nearly 1,000 acres. Even now, I'm certain there are corners I've never seen. My friends Ethan and Logan and I decided to sneak in for a night of camping. Technically, camping there was illegal, but we figured if we stayed deep in the forest, no one would catch us. Ethan was the outdoors master, a Boy Scout aficionado who knew almost 100 knots. Logan was more interested in having drinks. He was happier with alcohol in hand than without. That night, around 11:30 p.m., we were lugging gear through thick forest trails. The air was perfect, warm but not humid, and I could feel the alcohol starting to dull my senses. Ethan carried a huge industrial flashlight, which cut through the darkness, but the woods were still intimidating. After about half an hour, we reached a small clearing, ideal for our makeshift campsite. We pitched the tent, set up chairs, and Ethan started a fire. Logan pulled out a speaker and played some music while passing me a beer. The three of us drank and talked for nearly 2 hours, enjoying the warmth of the fire and the quiet of the woods. Eventually, Logan started cleaning up empty cans, and that's when it happened. A piercing whistle echoed through the trees. It was deafening, yet strangely distant, like someone had blown a ballpark whistle a mile away. Instantly, the carefree vibe vanished. Logan shut off the speaker, and we sat frozen, straining to listen. The forest had gone unnaturally quiet. Not even an owl or a squirrel stirred. Ethan whispered that we should pack up and leave, but Logan and I hesitated. Whoever made that noise was likely aware of our presence. It was 3 a.m., miles from any road, and something about being so exposed in the dark sent a chill down my spine. Then, out of nowhere, a firecracker flew over Logan's shoulder, landing in the fire and igniting with sparks. I screamed, Ethan cursed and bolted into the trees, and Logan and I followed blindly. Branches whipped at us, roots tore at our feet, but we ran until we were sure we weren't being pursued. Breathless, we regrouped and debated returning to the fire. Ethan insisted, as irrational as it seemed, that we check on the site. Using his flashlight, he navigated us back. That's when we saw them. 3 figures sat in our camping chairs, motionless, like statues. The one facing the fire had a lifeless expression, mouth slightly agape. They weren't moving, talking, or reacting in any way. My stomach turned, and we backed off slowly. Before we could leave, Logan stumbled over a root. In the moment it took him to curse, the fire suddenly snuffed out, as if an invisible hand had smothered it. The forest plunged into darkness, and then footsteps. Heavy, crashing, coming from behind us. We didn't stop. We ran until the tree line thinned, burst out of the forest, and scrambled into Logan's car. Miraculously, we weren't followed. The next morning, Ethan insisted we return to recover his gear. Reluctantly, I went with him. The clearing looked almost untouched, except for the rotting smell coming from the tent. Inside, we found a dead rat, left as a warning. That was the last time I ever stepped foot in Cedar Hollow Preserve. Even now, I can't explain who or what those motionless figures were, or why they had targeted our campsite that night. I just know one thing: I'll never camp there again.